Welcome to Stitchery Stories, where textile artists share their life in fabric and thread, inspiration, techniques, disasters and delights. And I'm Susan Reeks, enthusiastic embroiderer and textile art dabbler who also loves podcasting. So take a break and enjoy our light-hearted chat, and please share with your friends so they can enjoy it too. I just wanted to pop in and ask for a favour from you all today. You may have seen my posts on social media about this or read newsletter, so I'll be quick. Please would you vote for Stitchery Stories in the British Podcast Awards Listener's Choice Awards. It's really easy to do. Just visit www.britishpodcastawards.com, and British Podcast Awards is all one word. Click Vote on the top of the menu and then type in Stitchery Stories in the search box, and it's down as 2 words. So it finds it, it'll pop up, and then you simply add your name and email address, check the tick box to confirm that they can store your details to vote, and then click Submit. By the way, you don't have to join their email list to vote, and you can only vote once. Voting closes at 5 o'clock on Wednesday the 15th of May, and if you know anyone who is a fan of the show, or just a fan of embroidery and textile art perhaps, you can share and encourage them to vote too. I really appreciate your help, and I hope we can really lift the profile of textile art, embroidery and our lovely guests by doing well in this award. So thank you very much. And now, let's get on with today's show. Hello, and welcome today to our lovely guest, Kathleen Laurel Sage. Hi, Kathleen.
Hi, Sue. Lovely to be with you today.
It's lovely to speak to you as well. Yes, really, really nice. Now, I've got a bio here for Kathleen to introduce her. So we've got Kathleen Laurel Sage, textile artist. For those who do not know me, I'm a freelance designer and embroiderer who for the last 20 years has been producing a wide range of innovative textile works using a soldering iron and a heat gun. I predominantly work with water-soluble stabilisers to trap layers of organza and other fibres such as luchador and acrylic felts that will melt to make a range of conventional items and exciting 3-dimensional structures using machine embroidery as the common link. My inspirations are taken from my own garden and gardens of the National Trust, which I visit regularly, drawing and taking photographs as visual resources for an ever-growing collection. It is this collection of work that allows me to dream and design in my head prior to drawing it down onto paper and exploring all the realities and numerous possibilities that lie ahead of me. For me, this dreaming process is part of the act of creating and is very much as important to me as the finished piece. These dreams and stylised line drawings are the building blocks and foundations of my work and inform me where to use my soldering iron and heat gun. Ooh, soldering irons and heat guns, that sounds interesting.
Oh, it is. It really is. Not so good when my husband's concerned. He thinks I'm going to burn the place down on a daily basis.
Best for him to be out of the way then.
Yeah.
Fabulous. Now, before I forget, because I've been terrible recently, I will give you Kathleen's links now, and then it's done and we'll just recap at the end. So I think the best place, Kathy, to get in touch with you is your website, yes?
Yeah, there's all the links on there as well, and all the buttons that you can press to get to me various ways.
Brilliant. That makes it easier. So that's kathleenlaurelsage.co.uk. And then I know that you're busy on Facebook, because I think that's where I first found you, actually. So you're Kathleen Laurel Sage Textiles on Facebook. Instagram, the same, Kathleen Laurel Sage Textiles. You're on Twitter as well, Kathleen_Sage, and you're also on YouTube as well, which is very interesting. We'll come back to that later. Of course, all of Kathleen's links will be on her episode page on stitcherystories.com as well. So there's lots and lots of ways where you can find out more about Kathleen. There, yay, I've done the links. Woohoo! Now then, Kathleen, before we get further into your stitchery story today, would you like to share with us what you are working on and what's got you excited?
Ooh, well, I've got really excited this week. I've been working this week with block printing, but trying to incorporate the block printing into what I'm known for doing.
Right.
So it's been a bit of an issue at times because the acrylic paint, although it is permanent once it's dry, where I work with water soluble, it was where do I actually put it on? Do I put it on the water soluble? Do I put it on the fabric? Is it going to stay there? It was all sorts of problems like that. So this week I started working with acrylic felt and some other kind of fibres that melt. And I've been block printing onto those and then layering up as I normally would do with my organza and stitching with my machine embroidery. And then instead of putting it in water like I normally would, I've taken a heat gun to it instead of my soldering iron, which has been quite nice for me because it's the soldering iron. Just you've got no control. You've got control over the soldering iron, but you haven't got as much control over the heat gun.
Right.
And the heat gun has done some interesting things to it, of which I'm really quite enjoying, to the point where I've just rushed out to the framers this morning to get some of them framed because I was so pleased with them. So it's basically what I'm known for doing, but I'm just adding in some other kind of techniques to sort of try and give my work a slight twist, because sometimes you get set in your way of doing something that you know that works. And it's lovely that people know all of your work from, the way you draw, your style. But I kind of just wanted to have a go at something a little bit freer, not quite so controlled.
Right. Now that's a really good point, because I think it is lovely to be known for something, as you say, but then the other side, the flip side of that, is the trap of not moving forward and getting stuck in a creative rut, I suppose. So how nice that you've been challenging yourself. And it does sound, with all of that there has been some challenges along the way as well. So all part of the enjoyable process, no doubt, too.
Oh, yeah. It's been, this week, my studio at the moment looks like a bomb has gone off in it. Normally it's very clean and very tidy because I can't create in an untidy environment. I'm not the kind of person that builds up project after project and then, just pushes it to one side and carries on with the next. I normally work in a tidy environment, and it just looks like, well, I think every drawer and every bit of the cupboard is out in the studio at the moment.
Sounds like a lot of fun. And what made you, is this the first time you've kind of incorporated block printing? And if so, what made you decide to do that?
Well, to be honest, it was somebody else that made me think about it. It's probably wiser to say that when you go to shows and things and people have seen your work for a lot of years, they sort of come along and go, well, what's new? And Jamie Morden came along from Coloricious, who makes all the lovely block printing things. And she said to me, have you ever thought? And no, I hadn't thought. And I've been looking for a while for something that I could sort of tweak my work with. And this appealed to me. I think it's because of I like structure to my design. I tend to see line and shape before I see colour. And the colour just happens right at the very end. I seem to have a sort of natural feel about colour, but it's the line and the shape I see. So the block prints being very organised, almost like stencils and things like that, that appealed to me. And it also was similar to the way I normally draw and the way I normally design. So it felt right.
Yes. Now that's interesting, because Jamie was a guest, about a year or so ago, I would say, quite a while ago now, when I spoke with Jamie. So, so if anybody wants to go back and listen to Jamie's episode where she's explaining about how she got into block printing, and her story was also equally as interesting. So, that's a nice tie-in. I hadn't realised that. Brilliant. And yes, I've seen a lot of your work like you've been sharing on Facebook and so on, and there is, elements of repetition in there, so I could see why you would be attracted to using block printing as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm looking looking forward to seeing how it sort of pans out. The trouble is I've now got a head full of ideas, not enough time to do it, and I really quite need a 24-hour day and 12 hours pattern to fit it all in.
I know. I was talking with somebody a couple of weeks ago, and we came up with another idea. So sometimes we talk about unfinished objects. So we've also got this massive list of unstarted objects, haven't we? All these things that are floating around in our heads, just waiting for an opportunity to burst out and turn into things. Yeah, I think we all understand the excitement of having had a week developing ideas, and now you've got your head spinning.
Yeah. Mind you, I've done a lot of drawing as well this week, because I find that I can't concentrate on the next thing until I've actually got it out of my head. So when it gets to the point where I've got an idea, I very often draw things down because I need to go back to them, and also it stops it from banging around in your head because I can't move on because I've just got this idea, it won't go away, and then I can't sleep at night.
I know what you mean. I get it sometimes with designs, but I also get it with my work as well. So if I'm thinking about, I've got some, blog posts or whatever to write, I know most people think, it's a chore, but actually I'm kind of thinking, I could do this, I could do that, and I could do the other, and you get this whole list of things that I feel like getting up and doing it,
What we like.
I know. It's because we love what we do, isn't it, Kathleen?
Oh yeah, I mean, I must admit, one of the things that is quite scary in life is that you get to. I've gone past my 50s, and things like my eyesight is playing up, and and things like you sit for too long, so you get a flat bottom, and then you wonder why the backs of your legs hurt, and it's because I spend most of my time doing what I love, and I don't want to stop, but you suddenly think, better look after my eyes. That's another thing I've been doing this week. I've been running around looking after myself and making sure that I've got new glasses so I can see what I'm doing, and etc.
Yeah, these things creep up on us, something chronic, don't they? Absolutely. So, Kathleen, how did you first get interested in textile art? You said there you've been doing this for a number of years. So how did you get into it, and what sort of processes did you first learn, and then how have you developed over the years, would you say?
Well, I suppose where it all starts is when I was a little girl and having creative people in the family. And back in the day when children were seen and not heard on a Sunday afternoon, and we were amused. And because I've got creative people in the family, I started with cross-stitch and all that sort of thing, sticky papers. And then really, I suppose it was when I got married. You don't do an awful lot for your teens because you're growing up and learning and doing all that sort of thing. And then when I got married, my husband had a hobby and I needed a hobby. So it seemed to just kind of happen. I started really in patchwork. That's where I originally started, because it was something that my mum did. And I started in patchwork, and over a period of time, I was not happy with the fabrics that were available. We didn't have fabrics coming in from America and things like that. So I decided to look at how I could actually produce my own fabrics to make my patchwork more interesting. And that's where really I took the lid off a can of worms, because I went off and looked at all these fabrics, discovered embroidery. I then worked my way through lots of qualifications to do with patchwork, embroidery, finally machine embroidery. But I never went back to patchwork because I learned all these new techniques. And I think that's where I then was so eager to use all the techniques. I think it was back in 1998, I did a diploma in textiles through Leicester University in conjunction with Kettering Institute. And I had to do a lot of things that I didn't think I could do. And one of them was to actually find something and put my mark on it. And that's a really tall order, because there's so many people doing so many things out there. And how do you do that? And I suppose I sat down and I gave myself a list of the things I enjoyed doing and the things that I wasn't very good at. And the organza technique came out of wanting to use organza but not being able to control it under the sewing machine, because the sewing machine chewed it all up. So how could
a nightmare.
How could I stop it doing that? Water soluble was, back at that point, was still the type of water soluble that you had to boil out, so that wasn't going to work with the organza. Yeah. And when the new water-soluble came out, the cold water one that was strong, it was much stronger than the original one, that solved that problem. So then it was a matter of, how do I want to make? Do I want to make squares? Do I want to make whole pieces of fabric? And my initial idea was I wanted to make curtains that let light through. So now the water-soluble was available, I could use the organza. Then it was all about how am I going to hold it together. So the machine embroidery came in, the layering came in to make a fabric between the water-soluble. Yeah. When I stitched it and dissolved the water-soluble away, I'd got a fabric, and it was at that point, it was okay, but it didn't look particularly, it was see-through, but it wasn't singing. And then suddenly I remembered my reverse applique days from patchwork. Right. So I'm going to cut layers off the top of it and let colours come through from underneath from where I've layered them up. And then lastly, just by pure coincidence, a lovely lady called Margaret Bill, who's the pioneer really of the soldering iron, she was out there and she was using a soldering iron to melt things. And I thought, hey, this is really interesting. So that's where the soldering iron came in. I wanted to try, wanted to see what it was all about, what was all this melting of fibres and not using scissors, and it worked perfectly for me. And because my designs are very stylised, it's a bit like working with a stencil. So I was able to create sort of fairly stylised, simple designs. And then when I took the background away with the soldering iron, my designs jumped out, which is what gives them that lovely see-through, lacy look. And that's really kind of how I went about it. But to be honest with you, I think they were all sort of steps that kind of creatively happened as I needed to solve things.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
It does, yes. I think that's the thing about any creative challenge or any creative journey is there's drivers behind why we're doing what we're doing, isn't there? That we're trying to solve a problem or achieve a certain look or, create things for sale or do something that we can teach. So there's that stepwise journey, and it's not a 10-minute journey either, is it, Kathleen?
Gosh, no. That was 2 years. That was 2 years of playing with those sort of techniques I've just described there. I quite often get asked when people see me at shows, they say, well, what do you call it? Well, it must have a name. I said, well, it hasn't really. It's something that I sort of put together through knowing about several techniques. And I can't really call it layered between water-soluble, machine embroidered, reverse applique, organza. So I tend to refer to it as the organza technique, which seems to be what everybody now knows me for, and it seems to have sort of rounded that all up into one thing.
Yes, and I think the other thing running through the background with all of that is the impact of, I don't know if technology is the right word, but as products have improved, as you say, the water soluble has changed and improved, and lots of things that we have now, you know how exciting it is when you go to the knitting and stitching show and you go around and think, oh, I need to get this, and I need to get that, and all these things that didn't exist are now so much better. And it's always really great to have a go with those kind of things, isn't it? So, technology, there is technology behind these products. So let's say the technology has moved on as well, which has opened up more avenues for creativity as well. Yeah, well, I would never have been able to do what I do with the organza technique with the old water soluble. It was just you used to sort of, if you coughed or you sneezed, it developed holes. So technology and the way they move things on, it is great. I love it. Brilliant. You mentioned there about the inspirations of gardens and nature and drawing and photographs. That seems to have stayed with you for a long period of time.
Yeah, I think when I was at college, they tend to teach you ways to design, because what I met with a lot at the moment, my students will say I can't draw, which is a big bone of contention, because I think everybody can draw. It's just we don't all like what we draw, and we always like everybody else is better than our own.
Yes.
But we were sort of taught some sort of simple procedures on, how to lift lines off of something, how to take a shape off of something, how to take an element from here and an element from there. And so therefore, pictures have always played a big part, but I like working with my own pictures. And it's things like when you go to the National Trust and they have a heritage house there, it's not just the gardens, it's also things like the plasterwork on the ceilings. How many people remember to look up? There are beautiful ceilings and beautiful mouldings in those houses. In the houses themselves, the woodwork, the carvings on the woodwork, and that with the gardens and the formal layouts and the things like that, that's all. I find that all very appealing. I like that look. I like the lines, the structure of it. So, I do take a lot of pictures. I do a lot of, I tend to assemble pictures together as well, which is a really good way of designing. Because if you take a series of pictures and then you sort of sellotape them back together again and make a bigger picture and put a piece of tracing paper over the top of that and then draw off lines from those pictures, I find that really appeals to me. It's a really good way of a quick design that nobody else can repeat because they wouldn't put the photographs in the same order as you have. And you've sort of created, before you start with the tracing, you've created a new design just by taping all the pictures together.
Yeah, that's a really good idea.
But, I mean, I love it. I use it a lot. I try to get my students to use it. But, some of them I get a lot, well, you always do flowers. I don't like flowers. But it worked with lines and other things as well. But it's an interest. But there was plenty of those sort of things they taught us, and they stayed with me all of these years. And when I get to the point where I can't work out which direction I want to go, I just look back some of these very simple techniques and think, right, I'm going to work with that today.
Do you have lovely sketchbooks?
It depends. I find sketchbooks, mine are scribbles. They are my work. I stick things in them. If I'm out on I'm out with the kids and I've got a bit of scrappy paper in my bag and I some ideas. It all goes in the sketchbook. I wouldn't say they were lovely. Pages are lovelier than others. Some I get, really into, and I'll spend the afternoon on one or two pages. But I wouldn't say they're not designer sketchbooks. They are literally my ideas and my scribbles, and they don't really mean a lot to other people. They really mean stuff to me. Yeah,
so that's where I was getting to. Some people have got the most beautiful sketchbooks, and I think, I get sketchbook envy because I've got a sketchbook, but it's blank because I never get around to putting anything in it. Now, you've been doing this, you're saying, for at least 20 years or whatever. So during that point, Kathleen, what would you say has been the high point of your journey in the world of textile art so far?
Oh, many of them. I think every day is something happens, and I think, wow. I suppose really, the highlight was about 5 years ago. I was invited to go to New Zealand to teach at their quilt symposium, and I was really dubious of this because I thought, I don't make quilts. I burn holes in things, and and then when I thought about it, I thought, well, actually, quilts are layers. It's a backing fabric, it's a wadding, and it's a top layer. And when I thought about my work, I thought, well, actually, mine's layered as well. So if I really want to think about it, I suppose mine is a sort of quilt because it's got layers. So I went off to New Zealand with a girlfriend for a month, and I did 10 days teaching in New Zealand. And it was lovely. They were really appreciative of it. They took the skill and they ran with it, and we had some beautiful work come out of it. And, of course, the good thing is I've still kept friends in New Zealand, which is lovely because I suppose that's the highlight of it. I've now gone to the other side of the world, and I have friends on the other side of the world, and it's all because of my skill and what I do and sharing it with people.
Yeah, and that is one of the constant things that all of my guests, and we all kind of experience the same thing. It's a way of developing joint and common friendships with people. It gives you opportunities to talk and interact with people who you would, otherwise never have met. I mean, even with this podcast, I mean, just the other day, I got a letter from a lady in Singapore. I get emails from people from literally all over the world. And it's wonderful. And when I started this off, with 3 friends from Yorkshire, I had no idea really that it would fly so far and that people would get so much enjoyment out of it as well. So, yeah, I can imagine going over to New Zealand and as you say, being initially kind of wondering where your place was compared to all of these quilters. But I guess part of it was probably they're thinking, oh, let's bring somebody with some different viewpoints and different skills and let's see how we can incorporate that in our craft of quilting. So it works both ways, doesn't it?
And I did come back a liberated woman. I suddenly realised that my craft and myself could go places and that I didn't have to be a mum that just went abroad with my husband and rounded up the kids in the middle, that I actually could get on a plane and take myself somewhere else in the world. So it was quite liberating at the same time.
And that is an absolutely lovely highlight to mention as well. So above the artistry and the work that you were doing, there was that personal revelation of, hey, this is going to open up different windows for me. That's brilliant. I really like that one. Thank you. Now, moving on from that thread of opening up windows. Now, the reason why one of the things why I spotted you on Facebook ages and ages ago was you started talking about running a YouTube channel.
Oh, yeah.
And that is still, although I think there's something like 35 million YouTube channels out there, it's still perceived by lots of textile artists as like, oh, this big scary thing of YouTube. But it's perfect for demonstrating our art and showing people our craft and also techniques and so on. So do you want to just explain to us, because not many of my guests have really ever mentioned YouTube, so I'm going to pick your brains about YouTube a bit, Kathleen, if you don't mind. So do you want to just tell us a bit of the background to kind of why you got involved with YouTube and the sorts of things that you're doing and any kind of bits of inspiration or tips for anybody who are fancying giving it a go as well?
Right. Well, you're quite right. It is a big, scary place, to go, and especially when you don't like having a camera put on you. But I'm afraid, if I'm honest with you, I was dragged kicking and screaming into it. I have a daughter who is very clever, and she uses social media an awful lot, as does my son and most young people. I use it where I understand it and then go and ask people when I don't understand it. But to cut a long story short, Julia came with me to the Festival of Quilts last year before. And when I went off to teach, she sat on my stand. And when I came back, she said, Mum, why have you not bought all of the things that you do, because you keep putting them on Facebook and on Instagram, and I keep getting all these people coming along to the stand saying, oh, has your mum got that kit, or what about that? And she said, and you've just got your organza technique here. She said, why have you not bought everything else? And I said, well, it's lifting it, it's carrying it, it's getting it into these places. They're not easy, you damage things, and, I don't really know, but, there's only one of me. And at that point, she said, right, you need to be modernised, basically. and I didn't like it. I thought, actually, it was my daughter talking down to me, and I didn't like being told that I was looking a bit sort of like I always look and that I need to be modernised. But what she did was she came home and she worked out that we could have a YouTube channel, and she said, right, this is what we're going to do. I would like to become part of your business. I then had the conversation with her that if she was going to be part of my business, she needed to bring something to my business that would pay her wages. And this is what she brought to it. So what we have is Julia is the instigator of YouTube. She tells me what she wants from me, and then I basically sit there and do it, and she films me. It's not easy. I'm not very good with a camera put on me. There's a lot of, as you'll probably find with this, you'll have to edit bits out. There's a lot of things where I run out of things to say, or I can't get my words out, and she edits beautifully. So she takes something that is awful when it's been filmed, and she turns into that lovely thing that you see on YouTube. So that's where we got started. And basically she is working towards, she's trying to grow the YouTube channel so that I don't have to run all over the country.
Right.
Which is, I have got 50-something weeks in a year. And I can't be at one end of the country and, west and east and up north constantly, because it takes a toll on you and you get no work done of your own. So Julia's idea behind this is that it will enable me to teach from my own studio at some point. So we've started off with sort of things that I'm prepared to sort of give away, and hopefully the YouTube channel will grow at some point where we will be able to ask people to subscribe, and we will have different things going on where they will pay for a membership. Does that make sense?
It does. It's absolutely perfect. So that's a model that's very well used in online business, which is obviously something I'm involved with a great deal. So it's something that we see a lot on there, but I haven't really seen a great deal of in the textile art and embroidery world. So hats off to your daughter for dragging you along in that direction, because there is only so many weekends in the year and there is only so much mileage you can do, and it is downtime, isn't it? It's wasted time in some respects.
The point of view that, I can get things ready, or, and she's a great help as well, because when I can't, you get yourself set up in front of the camera and then suddenly I realise I've left something over there. So she'll pick it up and give it to me. And sometimes you see things sliding in and sliding out of the video that don't. But, and she's invested in lights and she's invested in the right equipment. The first one we did was a little bit shaky because we had an old camcorder that was awful. And, of course, when she said to me, Mum, is it HD? I went, I haven't got a clue. What's that mean? So she's invested in a lot of equipment, and it makes the process... Nowadays, it's fine. I'm not as nervous because I know that when I sit down there, I could forget my words. I could, knock something all over the table. But she is skilled enough to edit it. And one of the lovely comments that comes back from my students and people that follow me on Facebook is that they love the way that I don't hold back and I give them everything. I give them all the information, and they can go away and they can follow that YouTube video and they can create what it is that I'm actually trying to show them. And that's lovely, because that's what I wanted. I didn't want to do something where you gave people bits of information.
Yes.
I wanted to give away things that I was prepared to let go and that other people could enjoy the experience of making. And that is how it's working. And I'm really proud of it. And I'm looking forward to, my daughter growing it so that maybe in the future, who knows? I don't quite know where it's going because it's new. It's very new. And we're still, as I say, we keep plodding on with people saying, please subscribe underneath, but we get ladies pressing the screen because they don't understand what they're doing. It's lovely. It's my daughter quite often gets on Facebook and gives the ladies a rundown on, no, not that button. You need to wait till it finishes, because if you press that button, that pauses it. You need to wait at the end, and there's a little, and she gives them all instruction on how to get to their subscribe button. And it's obviously doing things because you've picked up on it, and various things this year that are happening, they've come from the YouTube channel.
Whichever channel we choose to work with, and we can't be everywhere, but you mentioned there just something very important, is that your videos and is giving people the experience of working with you. So at some point you want this to replace working with you, but I'm sure you still at the moment do work with people and probably will continue to do so in whatever limited way that you do that. But for you're going at it from a different angle, but for most of us, we're attracting people to us and attracting them with an experience of what we're like and what we like to work with and how we teach and how we interact with people is priceless. It's absolutely priceless. It really is. So hats off to you for embracing that. And I do like your videos as well. So it's
thank you.
I'm into all of this stuff, aren't I, you see? But yeah, I know what you mean. It's really, thank you so much for sharing that with us, Kathleen. Now, as we kind of move towards the end, as usual, crikey, here we are, we're heading towards the end of our time. My last question is basically, how do you organise your creative time? And again, I spotted something just this last week or so about how you do that. So do you want to just kind of share with us the last couple of minutes about the way in which you currently organise your time? Because again, I think people find it very interesting.
I have recently, this year, I've been so under pressure with work and teaching that this year I've had to look at what I'm doing. I'm racing around all over the country, as you say, that's lots of hours that I could be using. So what I did was I actually had a talking to myself and said, I need a week off. So I've organised all of my local classes, all of my students, all of my shop work, the weekends where I'm up and down the country, and anybody can have anything they want from me in the first 3 weeks of the month. And then the last week, and if it happens to have 2 weeks or a week and a half at the end, I have that time off where I spend in my studio or around my house or catching up with my housework, which never gets done, to myself, basically, where I can create, find some sort of inner space for myself to just maybe even just sit there all day and stare into thin air and just grow creative ideas. But that seems to really work for me because I was getting to the point where burnout is something that I will mention. I was getting to the point where it was difficult to keep up with everything. I was not feeling fond of my craft. And this past couple of months, it's like it's giving me that week at the end. Everything is like, I've got my gusto back. It's like, yes, and I'm going to go and do that. And yes, that's exciting. I'm going to go for that. And whoa. And, I've got a couple of books that I've been trying to write for a year and I'm just not getting anywhere with them. I've actually written three sort of sections of it this week. So it's things like that. It's organising your time and not being scared to cut back because that's the problem. I was scared to cut back because I didn't want to lose my, almost like if we called it, I didn't want to lose my place in the textile world. But what I realise is that if I'm killing myself running up and down the motorway and I might have an accident, that's not going to help either. No. And it doesn't seem to have affected work. It just means that people are being more organised about when they're booking me, and I'm being more upfront and saying, I have nothing left for this year, but if you'd like to book for next year, that's fine. So that's really what I've tried to do, because I just want to continue to enjoy what I'm doing, but I need to stay healthy, and my mind needs to be unblocked occasionally so that I can have that creative time of my own.
Yeah, and that comes across so strongly in what you've been saying today, in the excitement in your voice, and it really has come across so strongly. When we started talking about being excited, how excited you are with what you're doing, and the enthusiasm and the new projects that you're pushing forward and embracing YouTube and organising yourself. Really, I would say, all right, we're at the end of March now, so you've been doing this for what, three months or so? Really has, I would say, sounding like it's done you a great deal of good.
It has. It really has. I feel inspired going into the year, whereas last year, sometimes I didn't feel inspired. I felt sort of quite fed up because I couldn't get to any of my own work.
And when your business is based around your creativity, that's not a good sign, is it? So hats off to you for taking those difficult decisions and moving forward with a lot of purpose and getting your enjoyment and your mojo back again.
Yeah.
Fabulous. So on that high note, thank you so much, Kathleen, for speaking with me today. I thoroughly enjoyed it. We've covered some really interesting items as well, and I hope everybody finds this equally as inspiring and interesting as what I certainly have done. Remember, we've got Kathleen's best places for her website, KathleenLaurelSage.co.uk, and you can also go and find her on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and of course, go and check out her YouTube videos as well, and subscribe and press the right button and things. Thank you so much, Kathleen. It's been brilliant speaking to you.
You're very welcome, Sue. Thank you very much.
If you enjoyed this episode and want to hear more, then please join the Stitchery Stories fan club so you can get an email when a new episode is released. It's a quick and easy way of listening and of keeping up with any news and information around this podcast. Please visit stitcherystories.com. Of course, you can listen to Stitchery Stories on plenty of podcast apps at Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify and plenty more besides. You can also ask your smart speaker to play Stitchery Stories podcast too. But wherever you listen, why not leave us a rating and a review to encourage other people to listen too? I very much appreciate you taking the time to do that for me. So that is the end of our Stitchery story for today. Keep stitching, keep smiling and keep creating your very own Stitchery Stories.